Right, and it's my pleasure to welcome back to the show Dan Hill. We were last talking to Dan about his book, Leafs Through Famous Faces Decoded, which was really all about, well, reading other people's faces and emotions and what they are really saying or not saying. Anyway, Dan now has a new book out called Blah, 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 A Snarky Guide to Office Lingo. It's written by Dan and also by Howard Moskowitz and about 50 other contributors, including me, I hasten to add. So, Dan, good to be speaking to you. Love the book.
Absolutely. Thank you. Happy to be here.
And what was your inspiration for writing it? It seems to be a slightly different tack from your other book.
Well, first of all, I have to say that I've always loved humor. I've spoken at many business conferences where eyebrows have shot up when I've said, I'm a Marxist, a Groucho Marxist, because Groucho, of course, famously said to Margaret Dumont, who you're going to believe, me or your own eyes. And I think we know when it comes to office lingo and things that get said, people, they hint, they hold back, they spin, deflect, all those sorts of things go on. But I've always loved humor. It doesn't matter whether it's Monty Python or anything under the globe, because humor really gives you a chance not to necessarily pummel someone, but to make them realize the absurdity and the inefficiency of how things are getting handled. And hopefully with good humor, you kind of open things up a bit and people can recognize something. As to what inspired the book and your question, I have a podcast called Dan Hill's EQ Spotlight, which appears on the New Books Network. And 2 weeks in a row, without my prompting, I had guests who said that they estimated that about 25% of all managers are bullies.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just astonished by that in a way, although I can say that 40% of the bosses I had before I started my company were bullies. So maybe it's an undercount, if anything. But, both of us know that companies spend a lot of money on reorgs. They spend a lot of money on corporate culture. And yet you've got this cancer sitting right in the middle of the whole shooting match with all these bullying managers. And why don't they get removed? Why don't they get trained better? And I was trying to think about how I could possibly address this because it just seems so outrageous to me. And then I thought of The Devil's Dictionary by Ambrose Bierce. He was a contemporary of Mark Twain. The book is considered, his book called The Devil's Dictionary is considered one of the 100 greatest works of American literature. He was actually a journalist and correspondent for William Hearst in the Hearst magazine and newspaper empire. But the book is full of wonderful diabolical definitions like bore, someone who talks when you want them to listen. Yankee, no such thing. See damn Yankee.
Yeah.
Dentist, someone who puts metal in your mouth while taking gold from your pocket. And I just decided that this would be my approach. And then I said, I'm just one aging white guy. I have no right to speak for everyone else's experiences in the world, regardless of their gender, their race, their age, and which continent they're on. So I wanted to throw it open to a lot of other people. And I did so. And I'm really grateful that you contributed.
Yeah, thank you very much. No, I say it's fascinating, the elements in it. And as someone, I've never worked in a big organization. I've always been a journalist and, usually a freelance. But I've sat through an awful lot of corporate press conferences and presentations. And you just hear whatever is the latest hype, whatever is the latest buzzword. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the term buzzword bingo, what people are going to say.
Oh, yes, very much so.
And it's a cliche. And I mean, you do mention Dilbert, the excellent Dilbert cartoons in the start of the book. And I mean, it's that world that, some of the stuff that Dilbert cartoons display, you think, well, this is just nonsensical. But when you've worked in that world, you realize, no, that's how it really goes on. And that most managers are the pointy-headed boss who really doesn't have a clue and is just sort of hanging on for survival and being held there by his underlings who he treats terribly, but if they weren't there, he'd be out of a job. And I say it's just fascinating, this strange corporate culture that we have.
In honor of Dilbert, if you don't mind, I'm going to mention probably one of my two favorite cartoons of all time. So one is he's down the hallway and there's a big banner that says, "Welcome to marketing, 2 drinks minimum," which I thought was very funny. And the other one is Dogbert is playing consultant and comes to meet with the boss and says, "I've identified the redundant employees in your organization," and hands him a document. And the boss says, "But this is the company's telephone book." And Dogbert says, "You can't imagine what a time saver that was."
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, and I mean we've all worked and encountered people, and you think, how have they kept their job? How are they still there? And they come out in marketing speak and corporate speak, and you don't know what they clearly out of their depth, but nobody, it's, I suppose it's the emperor's new clothes. Nobody likes to point out that they don't know what they're talking about, because it's bad in the hierarchy. And
yeah, by the end of my time in corporate life, I only was, one of my job gigs was ever there about 2 years, and I survived it. But by the end, I thought that The Emperor's New Clothing was probably the greatest piece of literature ever written, because I simply experienced it so often. I had a senior VP that I reported to, and I swear the guy sought like a 12th second opinion for every single thing he did. It was the ultimate in the cliche, analysis paralysis.
mm-hmm.
The guy just couldn't get anything done, but boy, was he pulling down a nice salary.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. No, and it's interesting to see how the fashion for the buzzwords change over time, and what they're going to be, coming up with, and then suddenly it's been shoehorned into every piece of presentation, every piece of conversation, no matter how irrelevant it may be.
Sure. Well, I was, I have a PhD in English. So once in the time I was in academia, and I swore that you could always tell when they were a second year, but first semester grad student, because in the first year they had swallowed all the lingo and they were now spouting it. But in truth, by the second semester, the second half of their second year, they had started to get tired of it. The excitement had waned a bit. But boy, in that third semester of their program, they were replete with all the buzzwords that they could now very fluently say. And it was just terrible to have a conversation with them.
In your book, what would be pick some of your favorites, and don't pick any of mine, but pick some of your favorites from there.
Well, I have to mention first that one of my favorites is indeed yours, and I won't read the whole definition, but it's about the room's minibar, which you call the high water mark of capitalism. And you note that the tiny morsels are so tiny that it's as if they've been gift wrapped by elves. That is simply hilarious, and truly one of my favorites. Another one of my favorites, which I think carries a lot of significance actually, is diversity, which I define as, in senior management, a short white guy. Because I don't know how it is over in the UK, but in the States, that remains overwhelmingly true. And the statistics just seem glacial in the way that they do not move and move forward. I remember when I first came into the workforce, you're talking about the mid 80s. I knew how to type. I didn't know anything else. I remember going out as what we call a temp or a Kelly girl, and I get to an office, and all the women and me were in an office. We're in a typing pool in the middle of the room.
Yeah,
and we're working furiously all day long. We get like no breaks other than the bathroom. And around us, all the offices, glass enclosed offices, are guys.
Yeah,
and they're all chatting. Like, I swear, a third of the day they're just chatting among themselves while we work really hard. And you're even now you're at a statistic that like what 10% of the senior executives are female. I think it's actually about 8% in the Fortune 500 companies. Clearly, women have talents. Clearly, they're 51% or more of the population. I just think this is patently absurd because there are all sorts of statistics to show that in terms of profitability and innovation, pace of innovation, the companies that have more diversified senior management, they do better. So if you want to get really cutthroat and say forget about justice, Dan, that's woo-woo, that's too soft. And you just say, let's just talk about money. Well, fine, let's talk about money. Then let's also talk about gender diversification and race and so forth, because the planet's complex. White people, you and I, we're about 11% of the planet. The number's going down, not up. And if you want customers, you better make sure you understand other people's perspectives. Doesn't mean you always have to have their skin color, but it sure helps if you at least have empathy.
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, I've seen corporate brochures of a company I used to have dealings with, and the front of the corporate brochure was clearly taken from a marketing stock photo, and there was a boardroom and there was a mix of race and gender sitting around, and everybody looked healthy. And then they had a photo taken actually on their premises of their own staff at a meeting, and they were all middle-aged white guys, and they were all pasty-faced and showed overweight, all the things from people who, sales reps who are on the road and eating junk food. And it was sort of wonderful, the comparison between the dream and the actual reality of it. And
sure. Or I remember, because like you, eventually I moved over so that I was a supplier, or what's called a vendor sometimes. And that's actually another Dilbert cartoon where the vendor is being forced to crawl on all fours down the conference table, because the only person below the lowest employee is the vendor that you can go ahead and abuse. But as a vendor, I must say that one of the wonderful things is you get to leave the building. So you're subjected and you see all of the horrible, stagnant office politics going on. But fortunately, you get to go back into your car and depart the place. But I remember one time I was in Detroit and meeting with General Motors, and he says, "Do you want to stay for lunch?" Well, we head to the lunchroom, and it is diversified, but there is not a single table at which people of mixed color are sitting together.
Yeah.
Nowhere in a large lunchroom.
Yeah.
And I went, whoa, I think that's a problem.
Yes. Can't you see it? It's right in front of your eyes. Yes.
Yeah, it's literally black and white. Yeah. So, well, here's another one. Dialogue. Two people discussing a problem in the way the boss wants and that the company would approve of. We need genuine dialogue. We need back and forth. Everybody needs a feedback loop that actually is authentic. And we have terrible blind spots as human beings. One of my wonderful surveys that I came across once was from Europe, and it was 8 countries, and they asked the citizens of each country in turn, which country in Europe is the most arrogant, is the least arrogant, and which one is the most compassionate. And with only 2 exceptions, they always, in self-aggrandizement fashion, chose their own country. The only 2 exceptions was that the Italians said the Spanish were actually less arrogant. And in the case of the Czech Republic, they said the Slovaks were. But in every other case, lo and behold, no, we're the most wonderful. We're the most wonderful. And left to our own devices, that's what human beings will do.
Yeah. Sadly. Yeah.
Can I talk about customer service? This would be another one.
Oh, customer service. We love customer service.
Yeah, we always talk about how important it is, customer service. And so I came up with this one. Your call is very important to us. That's the term. And the definition is, and now here in full, while you wait, is Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Because your call is not very important to us. It is a cost as opposed to a revenue stream. Yeah. And we will fund and staff as poorly as we possibly can get away with.
Oh, yes.
I always thought that if the CEO or the CEO's wife or somebody actually called into the corporate switchboard and realized the person had wandered off and no one was answering, or how the telephone tree worked, and hit this number, then hit this number, then go to this number.
Yeah.
They go crazy. They go, they go bonkers. And yet they tolerate it because I don't want to spend the money.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and no, it's a particularly galling thing where they say your call is important to us. And I find myself pointlessly shouting down the phone, yeah, but not that important. You're going to staff your support service with enough people to answer your customers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or here's another one: untouchable. In India, a member of the lowest caste. In corporate life, the exact opposite.
Beautiful. Oh, that is priceless. I love that. Yes.
Because to your point earlier, I mean, how are these people in charge? I mean, some of them are very good. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some really brilliant people, but they can be hard-edged brilliant. Like, you're around the mafia. I remember being on a British Airlines flight, and they had a survey of British business executives and what's your favorite movie of all time. And like 80% of them chose The Godfather, which I really love as a movie. But I said, what does this say about your ethos and how you deal with your rivals and your customers and everything else under the sun? There's just so often very little accountability. Those people are seemingly untouchable.
And at the moment, getting richer, a lot of them.
Yes, phenomenally richer. It's appalling. I don't mind. I admit I create a slight distinction. If you actually created the business, it was your idea, you made all the sacrifices. I mean, Bill Gates suffers from a good deal of contempt on his face, as I know as an expert. And obviously now his marriage, dissolved based on some of his behavior. But at least Bill worked hard and is a bright fellow. And I remember relating to him because he said, I think in the third year, he said, I took off Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Because for years in running my company, my wife would take photographs. This is Dan on Thanksgiving. This is Dan on New Year's Day. This is Dan on this day. And I was always working. Yeah. Because I had a small company. And if I didn't work, things weren't going to move forward.
Yeah.
But the executives who are caretakers, who did not create the business, who did not sacrifice, but now they're in charge. They survived. They got promoted despite incompetency.
Yeah.
And they had these enormous paychecks.
Yeah.
Just enormous paychecks. It's unfair.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look for it. I think I had something about quality control. And I said it was something like checking the thread count on the executives' golden parachutes.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
Or here's one: burn the boats, says the CEO while watching from a distant yacht.
Yes.
Because I think if you're really a leader, of course, you have to bring people by definition with you. There has to be followers, but even better is colleagues, or a sense that you are in this together. Many years ago, I wrote a book on American festivals, and one of them was the Afro-Caribbean Festival in Brooklyn. And it was fascinating because they had corporate sponsors who were placed at the head of the parade, but there were no followers. Because what happened was they started the parade at the first float with, American Airlines, et cetera, started moving down the street, and everyone just waited until there was like at least a half-mile distance. And then the second float started partying. The music started, people started jumping on board, jumping off and mingling with the crowd. Completely different flavor from the stuffed shirts who are now a half a mile or more, disconnected from the rest of the party goers. And I looked at it that day and went, that's a lot like corporate life, actually. I've got the people in the corner offices and they have very little sense of what else is going on. And the idea that we're in this together pretty much doesn't exist.
Sadly, yes.
Yeah, sadly, actually. I'm saying this with some glee, only in that I remember the festival's a lot of fun, but the daily reality of corporate life, often is not much fun at all.
Yeah. What do you have in the book give us some examples on meetings, because I mean, meetings are always a fascinating feature, and people are always holding forth on things like LinkedIn on how to cut down on meetings or make meetings more useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to it, the meetings seem very often to be called by a senior exec who wants everybody there to listen to his latest pontifications and really is not interested in any feedback or anything.
Oh no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's quite a few, of course. One of them is an all-day meeting, which is particularly tedious, obviously.
Yeah.
And the answer is a badly facilitated 1 hour discussion.
Oh, lovely.
And it's true to your point, because think about the efficiency we demand on the factory floor. At one point in high school, I worked at a factory that my father had previously managed, actually. And there was all these quotas, and you had to get this done and that done. And there was a lot of accountability. And then you think about a meeting. There are too many people in the meeting. Nothing changes as a result of a meeting. As a friend of mine said, a meeting's like a story. But in this case, it has a beginning, a really long middle part, no climax. And it's not so much a denouement as it's simply you run out of time and you move on to the next equally boring meeting.
Yeah.
And that tends to be what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. You're right on that. And, I think meetings have probably got even worse now because people are on their phones
Yes,
throughout.
yes. Yeah, if you've had the occasion, as I had, to be a speaker on the podium at a conference, you are at the same time noticing that there are quite a few people on their phones or their laptops, and you're fighting for their attention because there are all sorts of distractions and other opportunities. Another definition in the book is staff meetings, tedium interspersed with boredom. It's sort of what someone said of Katharine Hepburn, who's actually a great actor, but I think it was Dorothy Parker who said, "Oh yes, Katharine Hepburn runs the entire emotional gambit from A to B and back again."
Yes.
Too many meetings are actually like that.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have anything in the book about everyone's pet favorite or hate? I mean, PowerPoint.
Yeah, I do have one on PowerPoint. I can't probably find it immediately, but I think it's something like statistics and graphic symbols fighting to avoid asphyxiation. and I say that because one time, speaking of conferences in North Carolina, I followed to the stage someone from Walmart, and boy, were people happy to have me there, because that person's charts, every slide was chock full of numbers. There wasn't a joke to be heard in the guy's presentation. There was no imagery whatsoever. There were no call out quotes. There was basically no fun. There was nothing in it for the audience, just this long slog of numbers. And if that was any indication of what Walmart's culture is like, heaven help us all.
Oh, that's wonderful. I think that's a good spot to end it on. It really does sum it up. And I say, the book is called Blah, 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 A Snarky Guide to Office Lingo. I'm not sure if we'll use it on YouTube or not, but I'll just slide back, and there's the book. And it's available on Amazon. It's available on Amazon UK as well as US. I got it from there.
At least 13 markets, but definitely the UK. Yes.
Yes. And how's it going? Because it's now been out, about a month or so, is it?
Somewhere in that range. It's in the top 30, I believe, for business humor, which is almost an oxymoron, I suppose. But I'll win whatever category I have a chance in, and that's fine. So I'm happy. There's 80,000 business books out at any given time on Amazon.
Yeah.
So God knows there's lots of competition.
Yeah.
So if you can move up the ranks, it's a pretty sweet thing.
Yeah. And what are you planning next? Because I mean, you've written other books, and like most authors, once you've got a book out, or once that between putting down the word processor from ending one manuscript to it actually appearing, you inevitably are thinking of other ideas and things. So what have you got next on your agenda?
It's funny you should ask that question. I had told my wife after this book, I said, shoot me, categorically shoot me if I write another book. And what am I doing? I'm involved in a book project. I'm not writing exactly. So here's the twist. So probably my most famous book is Emotionomics by Kogan Page. They're in the UK, including a nice foreword back in the day by Sam Simon, the co-creator of The Simpsons. And Kogan Page wanted me to come out with the 10th anniversary edition in 2017, and I demurred. But with all the things going on, Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, even the Business Roundtable came out and said, actually, we need to move off shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. Basically, they're admitting they need to be more humane. And I just recently said, here's my moment. I really should come out with not the 10th, but the 15th anniversary.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do it as a written book because I don't want my wife to assassinate me because I already gave her the instructions. So I'm going to record it with two guys who are going to interview me, basically. It's going to be a voiced book. I think it's just much more fun to have the conversation. And I do remember my very first book back in the day was with John Wiley and Sons. And a friend of mine said, reading the book, he said, well, the editor must have gotten tired because about the 7th chapter, your voice comes back in the book. They had basically killed off my voice. And the great thing about doing it in this fashion is my voice will definitely be there for all of its better for worse, all of its blemishes. My character will be on display, and hopefully some humor and some wit, and most importantly, some warmth. I think we both know a lot of business books are just about as dry as could be. And they make me think of a line from Milan Kundera, the Czech writer, who said, don't trust anyone without a sense of humor. I never met a KGB agent who had one.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Well, Dan, thank you ever so much for your time, and good luck with the new book. And there's no truth in the rumor that your wife is currently down at the local gun shop checking out magnums.
Well, thank you for that. Along with the room's mini bar being the high mark of capitalism, I am trying in some small way to make blah 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 a second high mark of capitalism, but on the basis of urging reform instead.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, Dan. Until the next time we meet, thank you ever so much.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please click the like button, drop a comment below, and support us by hitting that subscribe button. For more weird tales, visit our website www.urbanfantasies.com. Until next time, stay well, stay weird.